Hi, good evening, Dr. Naseem Niaz. We're here with the Group 9 for presenting our topic, the assignment under your course. The topic of the assignment is, under certain circumstances, changes in exchange rate of a country may also influence the behavior of exchange rate in other countries described. I would like to pass the presentation with Marta with the introduction.
Okay, so good evening, Doctor. My name is Martha, and I'm going to continue on with the presentation. So this is the outline of our presentation. First, we have the introduction, then second, conceptualization. We'll look into factors, and the last thing is going to be the case study. I'm going to start with a brief introduction. So exchange rate is viewed as an important economic indicator in managing international trade, and it also plays an important role in spending. Next, I'm going to move on to define what foreign exchange rate is. So exchange rate is viewed as the rate at which one currency is exchanged for another currency. It can also be defined as the price of one currency in terms of another currency. So the foreign exchange market is the market in which foreign currencies such as the yen, euro, or pound is traded for domestic currency. We take, for example, the US dollar. And then this market is actually viewed in a decentralized, is viewed as a decentralized market. And when you speak of this type of market, it is integrated via modern information and telecommunication technologies. So next, I'm going to move on to talk about the forms of exchange rates. There are two forms of exchange rate. There's nominal exchange rate and real exchange rate. So when I speak of nominal exchange rate, it's referred to as the relative price of currencies of two countries. Let's take, for example, the exchange rate of £1 is equals to $2. Then the British can exchange £1 for $2 in the world market. And it's vice versa with the American markets. They can also exchange $2 for £1. And then when you speak of the real exchange rate, it's referred to the relative price of goods of Britain and USA. And it is also the rate at which the Britishers can trade its own goods for those of the US. The real rate is another name for the terms of trade, which is expressed as PX, which stands for the price of imports, the price of exports, and PM, which stands for the price of imports. So next, I'm going to move on to talk about the types of exchange rates. So there are 5 types of exchange rates. The first one is fixed exchange rate. So this type of exchange rate is linked to another currency or asset for them to be able to derive the value, and it's often measured in gold. And then the next one is flexible exchange rate. This type of exchange rate is an exchange rate where the rate of the currency is determined by the market forces, which are demand and supply. The next, I'm going to move on to talk about forward rate. This type of exchange rate is the one which stipulates the purchase or the sale of a foreign currency at a predetermined rate at some date in the future. So it can be determined. It is not going to be determined at the spot. So it's going to be at a later stage in the future. And then the next one is spot rate. This type of exchange rate represents the day-to-day exchange rate, and it varies by a few basis points every day, depending on how currencies are being sold in different countries. And then the last one is the dual rate. This one is separately by 2 values, and it's a type of exchange rate which is applicable to both foreign transactions and domestic transactions. So it's separated. So if maybe if they place value for foreign transactions, then another value will be placed on domestic transactions as well. Thank you. So I'm going to pass on the presentation to the next speaker or the next presenter.
Good afternoon, Doctor. My name is Oyefabi Limobola Solomon, and here I'll be discussing on how exchange rate in one country influences other countries. Here I have capital movement, political conditions, the country's current account / the balance of payment, and the influence of speculation. We'll take first the capital movement. Short time or long time capital movement influences the exchange rate. Capital flow tends to appreciate the value of the currency of the capital importing country and depreciate the value of the currency of the capital exporting country. The exchange rate will move in favor of the capital importing country and against the capital exporting country. The demand for the currency of the capital importing country will rise, and its demand curve will shift upward to the right, and exchange rate will be determined at a higher level, given the supply curve of the foreign exchange. Here we look at the political condition. Stable political and industrial condition and peace and security in the country have a significant influence on the exchange rate. If there is a political stability and the government is stable, strong, and efficient, foreigners will have tendency to invest their funds into the country. With the inflow of capital, the demand for domestic currency will rise and the exchange rate will move in the favor of the country. On the contrary, if the government is weak, inefficient, and dishonest, and there is no safety to life and property, capital will flow out of the country and exchange rate will move against the country. Now the third item, country's current account / the balance of payment. The current account is the balance of trade between a country and its trading partners, reflecting all payment between countries for goods, services, interest, and dividends. A deficit in the current account shows the country is spending more on foreign trade than it is earning, and that it is borrowing capital from foreign sources to make up the deficit. In other words, the countries require more foreign currency than it receives through sale of export, and it supplies more of its currency than foreigners demand for its product. And if this happens, the foreign exchange of the currency will depreciate as against other countries' currency. Now we move to influence of speculation. Speculation causes short-run fluctuation in the exchange rate. Uncertainty in the international money market encourages speculation in foreign exchange. If the speculators expect a fall in the value of currency in the near future, they will sell the currency and start buying the other currency they expect to appreciate in value. Consequently, the supply of the former currency will increase and its exchange rate will fall, while the demand for the other currency will rise and its exchange rate will go up. Now I will pass it to my other colleague to discuss more on the factors that influences foreign exchange.
Thank you. Hi, good evening. This is Muzaffar. This slide talks about four different factors that affect the local currency as well as other countries' currency. The first one is inflation. A higher rate of inflation, for example, in Malaysia than in other competitor countries would make Malaysian exports less competitive and may lead to less exports, depending on the price elasticity of demand for exports. If this result worsening of the current account, the exchange rate would depreciate in Malaysian ringgit. And opposite is true for other countries, for example, US dollar, Great Britain pound, and Japanese yen. With less demand for exports and imports becoming relatively more price attractive, the demand for Malaysian ringgit would fall while the supply would increase. Therefore, Malaysian currency will be depreciated and other countries' currency, for example, US dollar, will be appreciated. The opposite is true if the rate of inflation in Malaysia falls below the other countries. The second factor that affects the local currency ultimately affect the other countries is the changes in interest rate. When interest rate declines below to those in major world economies, international speculators are pessimistic about the future of the Malaysian economy, or suspected a large future depreciation in Malaysian currency. That might decide to sell their holdings of Malaysian ringgit and convert them into Great Britain pound or US dollar or Japanese yen. Ultimately, this would increase the demand for US dollar or Great Britain pound, while increasing the supply of Malaysian ringgit and cause a depreciation of the currency of the Malaysia. The third factor is types of economy. There are 4 different types of economy. For example, traditional economy, a free market economy, and mixed economy. So the free market economy, where there is a very little government interference. Because of that, whether the local currency will be appreciated or depreciated, that totally depends on the supply and demand of the currencies. The fourth factor is the economic growth and recession. Economic growth, when the economy is sound, the growth increase in a local economy. In that case, production is higher, so the inflation is stable. As the inflation is stable, it's not increased, the local country's currency will be appreciated. So opposite will happen, which is depreciation of the foreign currency. On the other hand, if there is a recession, in that case, the price of the goods and services rise higher. So that will also depreciate the local currency, and the foreign currency or other countries' currency, for example, US, Great Britain, and Japanese yen will be appreciated. That's the end of my part. I will pass it to my next presenter.
Okay, I'm Quinsley Onyebule. I continue with the case study. We want to look at, please, figure 1. Okay, so we want to look at how recession can cause a depression in exchange rate using sterling versus euro and dollar. So here in UK in 2008, there was a Great Depression. And from this figure, we can see within 2007 and 2009, this is the trend of the currency. We can see that there is a sharp fall in the currency. This is as a result of the recession that the country experienced. We also want to compare this recession to another country to see how the kind of effects that took place between the two countries. So from here we can see this is the trend of US dollar and euro. Here we can see in 2008, the same year, that the value of the currency we are floating. So comparing this to the figure 1, which is the sterling, we can see the difference that there is a sharp fall in sterling, but this one was just fluctuating. This goes to show that when a country is experiencing recession, the country is more affected than any other country. The exchange rate, the interest rate tend to depreciate, and this also make the country less attractive for investors. Then we'll move over to figure 3. Okay, this is a current account deficit. This also using UK as an example. We can see in 2015, there was a current account deficit in UK when the current account deficit was around 7% in 2015, we can also see that there was a sharp fall in the trend of the currency. So this also goes to show that current account deficit or current account percentage of GDP can also cause a depression in the exchange rate. Figure 4, move on to the next slide. So this also is a trend of currency during speculation. When when there is speculation, when the speculators demand more of the currency, it tends to change the currency. It tends to depreciate the exchange rate. So this is the movement of the currency as the speculators are demanding more of the currency in UK. So the pounds tend to depreciate, tend to change. So in conclusion, so we can conclude that a decline in exchange rate decreases a purchasing power of any income and the capital gain. Also, we can see from the study so far that exchange rates can influence the income, the interest rate, the inflation, and also capital gains from domestic securities. In general, investors should understand how currency values and exchange rate play an important role in the rate of return on their investment. Thank you.
Terry McCarthy.